What made Tim the perfect fit to stay on as head coach?
He showed a lot of character, showed mental toughness during some tough times. He's had really good defenses throughout his career. And then probably the biggest factor was, even though, particularly at the beginning of the transition, which was difficult, he showed a lot of mental toughness. He didn't panic at all. And then finally, he has, I think, a great deal of respect with the players in the locker room. And that was really paramount. The players, I just saw how they reacted to him. And I think I have a pretty good rapport with our players, and I was getting a lot of positive feedback and a lot of, I think, very heartfelt convictions that they thought Tim was the guy. And so that made it all that much more easier, particularly after we started to play better.
Did you consider having an open, see who else was out there, wait till the end of the year?
Or? You don't really think about that until you finish the season. But then as I saw things, because, and there's probably a number of things that even the general public isn't aware of that the team had to go through this year. And in fairness to them, not to overplay it, but starting those 4 games on the road really kind of put us in a hole. And then obviously all the unevenness, if you will, at quarterback because of the injuries to Buck made it really, really difficult on the team and the staff. And so the fact that Tim and the staff were able to kind of buoy that out and still come up strong in the last third of the season were just so much positive that I thought was the way to go.
What kind of growth have you seen in him since Labor Day to the end of the year here?
Probably the biggest thing is I know he'll kick a field goal with 48 seconds left. Pardon me. And that was also a great learning experience for Tim, but also he stepped up right away and said, I made a mistake. But he's been very even-keeled, very professional, very mature. So that just kept on being reinforced, and that's what made it to be a much easier decision than you would think going down the road.
Sure, when you have a 19-34 record as general manager of this team over the 3 seasons, what, I guess, do you point to as a reason why you should be back as general manager?
Well, first of all, that's really the board's decision. But what I would say is, I would suggest that you have to look at the whole expanse, and I would suggest also that people, with all due deference, look at where the organization was in 2009. And obviously there were some things that weren't necessarily going smoothly in 2009. So in 2010, I'd like to think that we changed the overall culture. We struggled a little bit in 2010, but in 2011, we in fact do get first place for the first time in 10 years. We in fact do go to a Grey Cup. We in fact do have 9 straight sellouts, which set a record. We do in fact set essentially a profitability record because of what we were able to do. So I think everybody in the organization, particularly on the football side, didn't all of a sudden get really stupid. I think it's the fact that at times a team, almost like an individual, has a rough spot where some things just don't go as well as you would like. And you can see a number of instances like that in pro sports, particularly pro football. The Indianapolis Colts, I think, went 10 years of 10 or more victories, right? And Peyton Manning goes down and they go 2-14. I mean, it just happens. The New Orleans Saints is another great example. I mean, they won the Super Bowl a few years ago, have absolutely a Hall of Fame quarterback, and they're 2-5 and really struggling. So and it's because I would, suggest it's because of the circumstances they're going through. We didn't have obviously the same circumstances, but I think we had some obstacles to overcome, and I'd like to think that I'm as aware of those as any, and that's why I think that we could be very positive moving forward.
Joe, the board of directors, Garth, has led a group to go around the CFL and see how other football operations departments, how they handle things. Will you be open to their suggestions or
Sure,
ideas?
Absolutely. I mean, I always like to get new ideas from anybody. And so, I think any time that you can get a different perspective, it's positive. And so I'm always open. I talk to the coaches all the time about, what do you think we can be doing better? I ask the players about that too, the quarterback. So anytime you can get a different perspective, I think that's constructive.
Will you be more proactive in free agency this coming or
Joe,
next year than you have been?
That's a great question. And philosophically, I've studied that for a long period of time, to be honest with you. And particularly when I was in the NFL, it just didn't seem like you got enough bang for your buck, to be honest with you. It seemed like too many times when you do that, you kind of overpay for the talent. They don't necessarily, not all the time, but a lot of times they don't measure up production-wise to the contract you had to give them because they're on that open market. And also it has the potential to create somewhat of a friction, if you will, in your locker room, because the players are saying, you say you believe in us, but then why'd you give this player so much money? So And particularly in the CFL, I'd be hard-pressed to think of a player that was a free agent in the last 2 or 3 years that made a really dramatic difference to that team's record. So if you go about that and look at that, I think we'd be very methodical in approaching that. That's not to say we won't do it, but just historically it doesn't seem like it's always that productive. I think what I'd rather do is try to take that money, and I think we've done a fairly good job of that, and try to keep the players we really like.
So how much of a priority will that be to retain your free agents and get them locked up early on, or not letting them get to free agency?
Absolutely. You know, it's one of the highest priorities. We really like all of our free agents. Having said that, our fans and everyone has to realize is that's not something that's totally in our control. You know, we're not going to take them into a rubber room with a baseball bat and say you have to sign this contract. And to be quite frank, some of our players that are up are fairly good players, and you know they may want to see if they still have an opportunity south of the border. And you know, I understand that, and we understand that. So, you know, if someone has given us honest effort and played hard for us, you know, if they want to explore that opportunity, we would support them, but then always welcome them back. So, I think, sir, to answer that is we want them all back. We'll be aggressive in doing that. Some already have expressed that maybe they'll want to try to see if there's an opportunity south of the border, which is totally understandable. So we'll just be patient and see how it works itself out.
Your respect for Buck Pierce is clear, and many fans have a great respect for Buck as well. Maybe is your approach to quarterback in the offseason less about moving Buck on, but maybe finding other ways to have Buck part of the program going forward?
You know, I think that'd be up for the discussion. Absolutely. You know, we have to try to work through this, and you know, obviously I have a great deal of respect and actually fondness for Buck. You know, so I want to be very respectful of what he has tried to contribute to the team and actually to the community. I'm sure you're all aware he does a lot of great things in the community, and so him not only as a football player but as an individual, I want to make sure that we treat his situation with the utmost respect, and we're open to any and all potentialities.
How much longer do Joey Elliott and Alex Brink get to prove themselves to be capable CFL quarterbacks?
You know, I think that'll be part of the evaluation process too. You know, they've done some good things. You know, Joey had a 400-yard passing game, which was the first time since 2009, I believe. And Alex has done some great things, or very good things anyway. He's won some big games for us. He'll get another chance this week. In fairness to them, excuse me, as they always at times they came into tough situations because you know oftentimes you thought Buck was going to be the starter, so Buck would get all the reps during the week. You know, these are young guys that when you only get 5 or 10% of the reps during the week. We're not really sure as a staff how representative that is of their play. So, and to be honest with you, that's going to be the toughest thing for us is to try to evaluate quarterback candidates moving forward if they haven't really had that much experience or that much exposure. So, you know, it's going to be a challenging process.
With that being said, would you have expected more from them when you re-signed them and brought them back? Because even though they haven't gotten the reps, that had to be something a possibility that you guys knew.
Yeah, I think the thing we would have really liked to have seen is maybe more consistency. You know, they did some really good things, and we wish we would have seen a more consistent basis. But again, they're young quarterbacks, you know, and you see that throughout the league. I mean, I don't think, off the top of my head, that there's been a young quarterback that has come in since 2010. So Travis Lulay was already here, and it's really stepped up. And so, you know, when you're looking at the quarterbacks that are productive right now, with the exception of Travis Lulay, they've all been here for a long period of time. But Anthony Cavillos, to Henry Burrs, to Ricky Reyes. And, you know, we could probably make a case, or any good football fan could, is, you know, there's probably not truly outstanding quarterbacks on every CFL team right now. So it's obviously, you know, it's a tough position to find and to fill, and we're just going to work really hard at trying to find that.
What were some of the things that you said happened this year that fans don't know about?
Well, there was obviously the 4 games on the road. I think was tougher than any of us realized. I believe it was 4 games in 19 days, I think, and it was cross country. So it was West Coast, East Coast, West Coast, East Coast. I think that took us toll. I think a sports physiologist on Yahoo Canadian Sports wrote about how hard that is on the human body doing that, and so I think that was more difficult than we thought. And then there was just, you know, I don't think that we were totally settled, and maybe it was because we had so many young players and a lot of injuries, but you know, there was just some things that I think maybe disrupted the the flow of the team, if you will. So I think I'll just leave it at that.
All right, guys, thank you.